Hi everyone, today I decided to get back to a very old series that I started quite a few years ago. It's called the Snowmen of the Old Masters. This series of paintings was just for fun. I picked some famous paintings and replaced the people in them with snowmen. And I'm sure you must have seen some similar paintings. Some people use cats instead, and some people even Photoshop photos of people on top of the original portraits. So I found my old sketchbook and sketched the picture of Van Gogh with the cut ear and his pipe, and I just added the snowman instead. Once that was done, I traced it on tracing paper and I transferred it onto my small canvas. The series was done in acrylic, which I don't use very often, so I'm still not 100% comfortable with acrylic, although I can get by. But I always thought that it would allow me to get more familiar with it, on top of learning a few tricks from the old masters. Hopefully, by copying their paintings, you start learning a few more techniques. So that's what I was hoping for when I started this series. And I always started by looking at a reproduction online of the original painting and trying to sketch it as accurately as possible. The only thing I did different was obviously replacing the face and the limbs as well, when there were some, with a snowman. So that part made it much simpler to reproduce the painting because I didn't have to make the person look the same. Obviously a snowman is just like a white ball of snow, and I just had to add a little blue shadow to give a three-dimensional effect. That also means I didn't have to stress out by focusing on the person's features, but rather enjoying working more on the background or the clothes and everything that was around it, which to me is simpler than painting a portrait of someone, because it doesn't have to be so accurate. Once the sketch was done and transferred onto my canvas, I worked on the first layer of painting, and I just wanted to have an overview of where all the colors were, so I just blocked all the colors. Remember that I don't have a particular technique, I'm just trying to figure out what I'm doing. And I'm not using any mediums or anything, I'm only using acrylic paint and water. And I didn't dilute the paint very much because I wanted to cover up all the white of the canvas. I also used some really cheap Robert Simmons brushes because they're pretty nice, they're firm enough, and they're cheap. Again, I already said that, but that's a good point. I painted the edges of the canvas as well, and I used the colors of the background. And I was so surprised that once the top part of the background was painted and I started working on the bottom part of the background, the orange and the red, the top was already pretty much dry, so you can tell I haven't used acrylic paint in quite a while. Now if you're familiar with Van Gogh, which I'm sure most of you are, you'll know that you can see his brush strokes, and that's really not something that I do when I paint my own personal paintings. But I must say it was a lot of fun doing that. It was liberating because I didn't have to make sure that everything was nicely and smoothly blended. And I think the hardest thing to do with this painting for me was to find the right colors. Other than that, it felt like I just had to apply basically lines of paint on the canvas, which was a lot of fun. But I did work really hard on trying to find the right colors, which was a bit tricky because I don't think the reproduction I worked with was very accurate. And I found that out also when I was done with the painting. I saw other pictures of the painting, and the coat was a little bit more green than what I did. There is some green in the coat that I did, but it's just not the same. Mine is more of a brown. But it doesn't really matter. So even though I haven't used acrylic paint in a while, I think I'm more comfortable with it. Probably because I've been using a whole variety of art supplies, and even though a lot of them have different properties, I think some of them use the same way. And maybe because I've watched tutorials and other videos and I've read about acrylic, I noticed that it was easier for me to apply the paint. And it's probably because I didn't water it down as much as I used to, so it didn't slip on top of my painting, which I really appreciated. I was not as frustrated as I used to be. So that makes me think that I probably should use acrylic a bit more often if I enjoyed that much. And I think that working on a smaller surface, this is a miniature canvas, makes it a bit less frustrating for me as well, because the paint dries so fast and I like to blend colors together sometimes. When I paint on a larger surface, the paint is already dry, so I can't do what I want to do. So this was nice, plus the technique of just adding brush strokes on top of brush strokes without doing any blending for this particular painting was nice and made it much easier for me. I did remember that some colors are a lot more transparent, and when I tried to add the lighter yellow on top of the background for the smoke for the pipe, I knew that I had to do something about it, so I first did it with a layer of white, and then I went over that layer of white with my orangey yellow. For the black, I didn't use black. I rarely use black. I used a mixture of burnt umber and ultramarine blue, which makes it nice and dark but not flat. It just looks more natural this way. It doesn't make the black stand out too much. And I really force myself not to use my tiny little brushes, because I'm just hooked on details, and this doesn't have any details. So I'm glad I was able to resist the temptation. It was really enjoyable to do a reproduction like that, and I know I'm going to do more for sure. So let me know if you want to see more of them, and I'll post videos of the next ones. If not, you can go see them on my Instagram, which is Sandrine's Gallery, just like this YouTube channel. And actually I will post on my Instagram account the previous paintings that I made many years ago. Thank you all for stopping by. I hope you enjoyed this video. Have a wonderful day. Bye bye.